I'm like breaking down all the intersections of me and all the intersections of my femininity, and I kind of wanted to do that for this set because it's International Women's Day tomorrow, so big up all the women in this room. Go and fucking send it, yeah? Go and run yourself a fucking bath, throw some rose petals in there, call your ex, tell him fuck you. This ain't a poem, by the way. This is not a poem. This is just me telling you.
It should be a poem.
This is me telling you to fuck your ex.
Fuck my ex?
No, don't fuck your ex. Fuck my ex. Fuck your ex.
I want to do both. Me too. I want to do both.
I hate you both.
I want to celebrate you today.
So yes, I am an immigrant, if you couldn't tell by my face. And for years I struggled with this image of beauty that I just like never really fit into. And so here's to all my women who feel sort of unconventional, you know, in a very conventional society that celebrates a very narrow image of beauty. And yeah, so I write odes to things that I feel like need to be celebrated that won't usually get the recognition. And so I wrote this poem for my nose.
It's cute. It's cute.
It's cute or whatever. I'm gonna stand to the side to recite this poem. No, I'm kidding, I'm not. But yeah, here's an ode to my Turkish nose. The way it slants and hooks so low down my face, you'd think it was sulking because somebody called it ugly. The way it waves every morning like a surrender flag, you'd think it gave up believing that its main function was to filter oxygen, but be the joke of every school bully to get under my skin. Dear Turkish nose, you are one of the only things reminding me of the journey my single mother took illegally across a continent to save her children. You are the apology I said every morning before class for being the dirty immigrant who couldn't even talk the language. And now you see me writing poems in it, yeah? Okay. Here's to all my teachers that told me I'd never learn the language, yeah? Fuck you.
English ain't shit.
For all the nasally notes of failure connecting T with H to make noises. Now if you're Turkish, now I know none of you are in this room, but we struggle with saying the. We say the. We can't say it. We can't say TH, yeah? When I finally learned how, though, and went back to the village, my cousins mocked me for changing. For dabbling with an identity, too immigrant to be British, but too British to be the village mascot, you grounded me. Reminded me that the hoot after a long crying session is a matriarchal heirloom. That every woman in the family is distinctly identifiable from all the side shots we burned our photo albums. The ashes, a reminder that we'll never be beautiful to our husbands, but I got me a wife. Go on, get in. And remembered that I am an extension of you. So to clip you, to trim you, or to even change you would be a struggle. Would be a struggle for my brown identity. You are the screaming voice from my ambiguity. A rather lowly looking middle finger at beauty standards that no one ever consulted you about. Thank you. Now this last poem, struggling here. Someone care to hold the mic for me? Thank you. So this last poem that I wrote, by the way, I'm so shit at like memorizing poems.
We know.
I've been trying. All right, I actually been trying, but it's failing. And I've been okay. I need a moment of seriousness. I've been thinking about immigrants in this country for a very, very long time. And then in June 2 years ago, a lot of them burned down in a block of flats and no one in this country really did anything about it. We just covered up the cladding that burnt down with, this scaffolding, and we just pretended that hundreds and hundreds of people just didn't burn down in that building. And I just want to take this moment to say fuck Theresa May for all that she didn't do for the victims of Grenfell. For all of the foreign people in the room, Grenfell is a block of flats that was heavily populated by immigrants, poor, working class people of colour, who ended up perishing because they failed to recognise the signs that this building would eventually burn down, and nobody did anything about it. So here is a poem that I wrote called From Humanity to Grenfell. I flowed through a man at first, woke him to a stifling thirst. The flames welded him out of his charred home to alert his neighbours lost within a deep slumber. And just like the smoke the haven was under, I watched their hurried clamour rush out to safety. Next time I exhaled, I was pulsating through the palms of a girl shy of 4. For a moment, I felt her throbbing ears, her panic-struck fears, and through the hands she so gracefully let me enter, she clutched her father. And I rendered them inflammable. For a moment, anyway. I felt an artificial breeze and knew immediately I had arrived at my next station. Wrapped in cool cashmeres in a penthouse with a hell view, I shuddered through a sleepy watcher, blissfully unaware of her own contribution. She reached for her glasses, squinted at the horrid sight of a mother waving her child before a window frame ablaze. Cradling her own, she watched on, dousing his head with salty sprinklers of helplessness. At the drop of her first tear, I was heaving through the chest of a mother, gripping the arms of her naked child. Her white window frames melted, and amidst her breathlessness, a rough calculation tarred her brain. An ultimatum engulfed the remainder of her strength, and with a kick that swung the window open, she felt the weight of her child slip from between fingers that before today only lifted him up, above her own life. So how could she juxtapose my existence with this death, breaking bones instead of her own heart, and watching her young die? Next, I was the hopeless friend of a woman missing. Her legacy, a pile of ashes, unidentifiable. Her last words, prayers. Who goes missing one night, one morning, not one, but hundreds, ignored by their government, rendered missing. Sure, they were missing, amidst the flames that melted their skin, amidst screams so loud I doubted my existence, for how could I, humanity, fail in my conquest, in this purification that purged even the most wretched from their prejudice? How could I fail to flow through their hearts? If only I had flowed through that man, that echo of a man that signed me off for £2 per square metre, who saw lawsuits instead of burning flesh. If only I had flowed through his head, stroking his head. Sorry, I need a moment. I'm going to go again. If only I had flowed through the man, the echo of a man who signed me off for £2 per square metre, who saw lawsuits instead of burning flesh. If only I had stroked his head, filling his lungs with human stench, ears brimming with human shrill, showed him how it feels to fill pockets with linen they make shrouds out of. The very shrouds they couldn't use, for there were no bodies to bury. Tell him he built a crematorium instead for just £2 cheaper. Humans spill onto my lap and exhaust me at times of disaster. And for every soul I fail to encounter, I write poems. I write too many poems. Thank you.